I'd like to call the meeting to order. I'm Tanya Cook, Chairperson of the Metropolitan Utilities District Board of Directors, and I'd like to welcome you to the committee meetings this morning, September 6th, 2023. This meeting is being live streamed from the boardroom at M.U.D headquarters building located at 7350 World Communications Drive, and a recording of this meeting will be uploaded to the M.U.D website after the meeting's conclusion. Safety briefing. I'd like to invite our Vice President of Safety, Security, and Business Continuity, Shane Hunter, to provide a briefing regarding protocol for all individuals in attendance at the board meeting today in the event of an emergency. Morning.
Good morning. Shane Hunter, Vice President of Safety, Security, and Business Continuity. The normal entry and exit through the back of the room where most of us came in this morning, but if there's a reason to leave the space, there's another exit right over here on the right-hand side of the room. Outside that door, in the hallway, you'll find the nearest fire extinguisher and first aid kit. A little farther down on the right is the nearest AED. With the location of the AED in mind, show of hands who's CPR and AED trained in the room. Thank you very much. If there's a medical emergency in the room today for any reason, 911 will be called by the security staff. Will then escort medical people into this space for treatment. There's no severe weather anticipated for today, but it's important to remember that the severe weather shelter is in that same hallway. And if we need to evacuate the building for any reason, we will go through this door right over here, take two lefts, and reconvene in the parking garage for accountability. That concludes the safety briefing.
Great. Thank you. Roll call.
Bagley?
Here.
Cook?
Here.
Friend?
Here.
Sidzik?
Here.
McGowan?
Here.
Howard? Here. Kavanaugh?
Here.
I would like to advise all those in attendance that a copy of the Open Meetings Act is available on the wall in the back of the boardroom. Construction and Operations, Interim Senior Vice President and Chief Operations Officers Andy Melville will now review the proposed capital expenditures.
Good morning, Andy Melville, Interim Senior Vice President, Chief Operations Officer. I'll be reviewing the capital expenditure letter behind tab 5. This month there are 5 items under system improvements and 8 under building plants and equipment. I will be speaking to 3 of these this morning. The first 2 projects I will review are part of our condition assessment program covering 4.75 miles of water mains. Jay, if you could please bring up the map of the first project. It's WP 2064. This can be found highlighted on page 2 of the letter and listed as number 4 under system improvements for a cost of $89,600. Jay, there you go. This project will pilot a non-invasive condition assessment technology called PCAT. PCAT stands for Pipeline Condition Assessment Tool. We're looking to evaluate nearly 1.5 miles of 6-inch cast iron water mains for pipe wall deterioration using this tool. As you can see on the map, the project area is comprised of long, straight sections of main. This is where the technology works best. This system uses a controlled pressure wave in the main to provide condition data and defect locations. Jay, if you can scroll to the bottom of that picture, or of the page, you'll see a representation of the setup. It is not intrusive, so we're not digging up and putting any new accesses into the main. We're going to use existing vault, hydrants, things to be able to connect on and do this assessment. The PCAT technology does not require the main to be shut down, and water service to customers is not impacted like the other assessment tools that we've tried. This results in lower project cost. However, it does not provide as detailed data like the other assessment technologies. This project will include the assessment and a condition report to identify targeted sections for replacement. The effectiveness of the tool will be measured through comparison with the actual areas once we expose them for where it indicates that we have pipe wall thickness loss or other defects. The condition assessment is scheduled for this fall pending board approval. You can see on the picture, if you scroll up, Jay, the area that we're targeting is primarily residential, south of Q, north of Y, bounded on the east by 49th Avenue, on the west 50th Avenue. Nice straight runs, residential area. This is where we'll pilot this for our first use of this technology. The second condition assessment project I will review is again on page 2, listed as number 5 for a cost of $633,160. It is job WP 2042, 62, and 63. Jay, if you could bring up that photo. That would be the sea snake photo. As he's bringing that up, I guess, the sea snake is a technology that is a free swimming inspection tool that is pushed by water flow through the pipeline. We started using this technology in 2021 and have had good results with multiple uses. High consequence areas or critical infrastructure areas, for instance, in between 2 hospitals. It was used on 84th Street. The projects we're looking to use this technology to evaluate over 3.5 miles of 12-inch and 16-inch cast iron mains for deterioration using the tool is in 3 major roadways for this project, those being 120th Street, 90th Street, and Blondo Street. 3 separate inspection projects will take place as described in the letters. So those will be individual projects. They're all grouped together because they're all using the same sea snake technology. This technology does require the water main to be shut down for preparation work and for inspection runs. We will schedule this work to be performed to minimize impact to the customers. The project will include the assessment and a detailed condition report to identify targeted sections for replacement. The benefit of this tool is that it provides high-resolution data and pipe defects and locations of pipe defects needed for analysis in these high-consequence areas, such as these major roadways. Following the assessment and identification of the areas of wall loss, specific restoration projects will be planned. The condition assessment is tentatively scheduled for December pending board approval.
Andy, excuse me, you said, I think you said the main will be shut off, but there won't be any loss of service. How does that work? Don't you have to, isn't there a loss of service?
There will be a loss of service on this project. The first project is non-intrusive, so it's basically using existing infrastructure to hook onto. It sends a pressure wave, about 2.5 psi, a small pressure wave down the main. That's the first project. This project, we will shut down, and we have the potential to impact customers. I'm not sure, Masa, what the timing for, I believe it's 4 hours, 3 or 4 hours, and in the previous times we've done it on off hours, nights, or weekends to minimize customer impact.
Customers will be notified that it's going to happen?
Yes, well in advance. We'll schedule with the customers.
Okay, thank you.
So I want to add on just a little bit. Are you done with the condition assessment?
Yeah.
Okay. Mark Doyle, President. Thank you for the question. We're getting a little detailed on this one, but the condition assessment is probably, there's a study out by AWWA that enlisted, experts across the water industry. When you think about, well, you hear of main breaks as board members. We're on track to have just as many as last year, maybe more. Not surprising because we're working hard to turn the trend. We're currently at 16 miles per year that we're going to replace. And when we say replace, really what we're mostly doing is pushing new pipe into the ground and leaving the old pipe there. 16 miles a year. I should know this, but I'm going to ask anyway. If we had to say how many miles we have to replace right now, we have 3,000 miles of water mains of all different types, all different vintages, and all different sizes. How many? Out of 3,000, we have 1,200 miles of cast iron, of which we've been working on. Ductile iron's just as big a problem. We have concrete pipe. Masa, how many? I'm not putting you on the spot, Andy. And I'm going to make a quick point, and then I want to get off the topic and let you know why it's so important.
How many miles we need to be replacing each year?
No, just in overall, out of the 3,000, how many miles are suspect? Not a fair question.
Are suspect?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, right now, with us needing to increase our mileage, of course, we're trying to get to nearly a 1% replacement goal. We're right now behind the curve. We're seeing
Yes,
main
for
rate
sure.
increase. So suspect, we're trying to catch up. It depends on what our service level
1,500,
that we're aiming
1,200
for.
miles?
So it's hundreds.
Okay, it's
I would
less than
say
1,000?
hundreds
Okay.
of miles that we're after. But as we catch up on those hundreds of miles, those that are just outside, those are aging, continue to age, and they're going to increase in risk as well. So it's a bit of a moving target, so it's hard to pinpoint exact.
I knew that was a tough question, and that's part of the reason why I ask it. But at 16 miles a year, if we had 1,000 miles that we know need to be replaced right now, which it's not 1,000, but it will become 1,000, that'll take us 62 years. And you hear of breaks like the 16-inch on Farnham and Harney that affected UNMC. The break down at 20th and Center that you may or may not have heard about, that where we lost 5 million gallons of water on that main break on a Saturday night. I think it was a Saturday night. And pressure from Benson to Fontenelle Hills. It's something. Conditional assessment, the study that I mentioned highlighted that conditional assessment is probably the most important topic in the water industry. You can't get all these replaced anytime soon. So anytime you can employ this technology, and Andy presented two projects, Director McGowan. One is over near 48th and Q, 6-inch mains back in a neighborhood, unintrusive, you can do it while the mains are active. Not as granular, but we know those 6-inch cast iron need to be replaced. The next one is a bigger one, as Andy mentioned, where we have to stop the mains and build exits and entrances and run a robot through it. But it's the most important topic in the industry. If we can only replace 10 to 20% of a section and know that we extend its useful life to 50 to 100 years, we're not sure. It's the only way we're going to get out from under this. So it's a little detailed, but when I get asked what keeps me up at night, infrastructure replacement on the water side is at the top of the list because it's hard to get after. All the other things that are just as important, safety, everything we do, it's not as daunting as an effort. So thanks for the presentation. I know we
Mark, let me
extended
ask
this a
you,
little.
this can't be a problem just for M.U.D. Is it an industry-wide problem?
It's a national problem.
Like on the East Coast where utilities are older than M.U.D.,
Yes.
is it a lot bigger problem? Do they have as many water main breaks? Is there data that, is available to compare us to others, or
Yeah,
percentage?
we could take the whole day on this, and that's a great question. We just discussed an article about, was it San Antonio? Yeah, the San Antonio water system that, we read it, but I've read a lot of things. Andy, highlight.
In July, I think they had 700 main breaks. In August, they were predicting 1,000. And if you go to their
In August.
yeah,
In 1 month.
In 1 month, yeah. And if you go to their website, they show their active main breaks. The time we're looking at was in between 17 and 20 main breaks at the same time. And it indicated there was 52 crews dedicated to main break
52.
repair.
And you can look at a website and find out how many days it'll be before your water service is addressed. That's what's happening. And then when you go out to the East Coast and you look at water systems that are much older, Boston, for example, they have similar problems, but they have mains also that are 300 years. Am I saying that right? How many years old?
A couple hundred at least.
A couple hundred years old that are operating fine, so age is not the only issue. And the last thing we also just read about and discussed, a water main break in Manhattan that flooded the subway system. So our problems are big, but yeah, anyway.
Andy or Mark or Masa, as they say, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Is there any way to quantify these preventative efforts that are being made, the pilot projects? Is there data kept on that while we understand and fully are aware of the challenges we've experienced this summer, we are doing everything we can to prevent those breaks from happening. Is there data kept on that to let the public know that, hey, we are aware of the problem and here's what we're doing to prevent it and here's the data that backs that up?
I'll say yes. It's hard to get enough attention to really explain what we're doing. I sat in a meeting with Masa and Steph Mueller last week with the leadership at UNMC, and they were very receptive and appreciative of what we are doing, because they're replacing aging infrastructure as well. It just happens to be buildings. And so, yes, the answer is yes, and every year that goes by, we're getting better at it. We're capturing more data, and we're able to, as you said, what you said, these kind of things are definitely preventing main breaks and making the system more reliable. But yes, we'll work on that, and we have a better story to tell every year, and I think we're a leader in the country right now.
It's like an official in a sporting event that you don't know they're there until something happens, and then, well, gosh, the referee blew that call. Well, you don't hear about the other great calls that the official made or didn't make. So it's been a challenging summer, but we're doing our best to try to get on top of it.
I'll add that, with our risk model, we're able to capture every main break that occurs in the system and report on that annually. And when we talk about turning the curve, it's a long process. With the rate that we're going and what we're trying to increase replacement mileage at, we're not expecting the curve to turn in the next couple of years. It's going to be a decade or more. But we're going slow now to go fast later so we can refine our methods, like we're exploring different technologies with condition assessment. We're looking at different methods with pipe replacement and whatnot to lower the replacement mileage. But yeah, with every main break, we're collecting data and we can measure that over time.
You mentioned San Antonio had, what, 50 crews dedicated to main breaks, something like that?
Yeah, that's what the article indicates.
Does M.U.D have crews dedicated solely to main breaks?
Yeah, we have what we call a water repair office, which has 4 crews that's their primary job, and when they're not doing that, then they can do other system improvements.
So they're on call 24/7 for?
We have crews on call that rotate throughout the construction, so it's not specific crews, it's different groups of people who sign up to be on call 24/7, whether it's gas emergency or water emergency, water main breaks.
Thank you.
I have a question just for my own knowledge. Does it take specialized training to know how to operate these snakes? And do we do that internally to train people? I'd like to know just a little bit more about that.
Sure, it does take that, and I think Moss is probably better to speak to it.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, the technology itself, it requires the company to come in and with their technicians, and they go from city to city performing this. So it's a partnership, if this is approved, that we'd be out there, we'd be operating our valves to shut the main down, to dig the pits and get the permits to make sure the workspace is safe. But as far as the deployment and stuff, they've got technicians on site that help guide that.
So you say it's a partnership. So this is a company, a firm that comes in and they've got the snake mechanism. And so then they work with our crew. Okay, it sounds like something that'll continue to be done internally. A partnership with the people that own the snake. It's hard to visualize that. But then we contract with them to come in and teach our employees how to operate this. And I think I'm understanding it a little better.
It's a service they provide.
It sounds pretty sophisticated. Like it's not a simple.
It's a team effort for sure. I went out and watched the process near Children's Hospital. It's a team effort. Our folks build the entrances and the exits, and we work together to run that through our mains. That company on that particular one, which was one of the first ones we used, a sea snake, I think they said that our folks were the best they've ever worked with in terms of, yeah. If they didn't say that, that's what it sounded like to me.
I heard that.
So, yeah, I mean, really, it was a nice team effort.
Thank you.
Masa, do we own that equipment, or is that just part of a package of hiring a consultant?
it's part of the package of the services they provide is both the equipment. It's not for sale at this point. Who knows what's available in the future, but when they go city to city, they bring the tool with them that Andy shared the picture of.
Thank you.
It's proprietary, I'm pretty sure, and they were saying their patent's going to run out. So I think that's what I thought I heard on that job. Yeah.
The last item I'd like to highlight can be found on page 4 of the letter and listed as number 7 under Buildings, Plants, and Equipment. This project is a pilot study for pH adjustment improvements on the Platte West Water Treatment Plant residuals effluent flow, which is returned to the well-filled wetland area for habitat enrichment and aquifer recharge. This study will investigate the use and effectiveness of carbonic acid, which can be made with carbon dioxide and water in place of hydrochloric acid in the treatment process. Currently, the hydrochloric acid is used to perform pH reduction to meet discharge permit requirements. Carbon dioxide and water can be mixed on-site to create the carbonic acid, resulting in a safer product to store and handle by the staff during operations. In addition to increasing safety, we expect to gain efficiency in the mixing process and a lower operational cost as well. Carbonic acid has been successfully implemented at the Florence Water Treatment Plant several years ago as part of that ongoing CIP. Results of this testing will be used in the Platte West Capital Improvement Project development for design and implementation of the new process. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Andy, on number 6 there, the security fence, install a security fence on the north property line. Do we not have any fencing or security in that area there?
We do have security fencing closer to the plant buildings and equipment itself. This is out on the exterior property line. There's new subdivisions being built, and the purpose of this fence is to delineate our land and make sure there's not encroachment by these new subdivisions. So we have kind of a buffer zone between where this fence is, our property line is, and actually the plant proper that's secured with its own system.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Vice President of Engineering, Masania, will review the acceptance of contracts and payment of final estimates.
Good morning, Masania, Vice President of Engineering. Excuse me. I'm presenting the next 2 agenda items, the finals letter and one large change order. First on tab 6, the finals letter. There are 6 projects this month, 5 water development projects and 1 cast iron gas infrastructure project. Sorry. Got a frog in the throat, excuse me. All of the water development projects came in under or within a few percentage points of the contract amount with no significant changes. I will highlight the remaining project on the letter, item F, which is found on the last page. This is the 5th of the 7 gas contract projects from the 2022 Q3 contract. The gas main was installed in 2022. However, services were delayed due to supply chain issues earlier in the year. There was an overall increase of 14% from the estimated unit quantities. We incurred some extra costs for temporary concrete restoration over the winter to help keep the neighborhood accessible prior to finishing service work in 2023. We also decided to use some enhanced traffic control safety devices along the busy North 24th Street corridor. And that is all I plan to cover in the finals letter, and would be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you, Masa. I have cough drops if anybody needs them. All right. Did you have anything?
I can move on to tab 7 if you're
Oh, I'm sorry.
ready.
Thank you.
Yep.
Why don't we move on to tab 7? That's a great idea.
Okay, tab 7 is change order number 1 for the water development project to install water mains in the Lake Cunningham Village Phase 2. This is located at North 96th and State Street.
This change order is for an increase of about $49,000 on the original contract of $436,000, or about an 11% increase in the original bid amount. The project was designed to be constructed at the same time as the North 96th Street roadway improvement project by Douglas County, but later the county notified the district of delays in the road construction schedule. The change in the water main depth and construction connection types were needed to accommodate the proposed road construction schedule changes. The developer has approved the additional costs with these changes. And that's all I have to cover on that one.
Masa, does the developer pay all these costs?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Vice President of Procurement and Enterprise Services, John Zellers, will now review the bids on materials and contracts. Morning.
Good morning. John Zellers, Vice President, Procurement and Enterprise Services. Bids on materials and contracts may be found under tab 8. There are just a few items that I plan to discuss this morning, and the first two may be found at the bottom of page 1 and the top of page 2. We accepted bids for water main work in the Maverick Landing and Villa at Pine Creek Woods subdivisions. The developers of both projects have requested that bids be rejected, as changes in the design of the development will require redesign of the water main project, impacting the construction costs. On page 2, we are asking for 2 ratifications for work at Florence associated with the purchase of equipment for the Minnelusa pump station and repairs to primary basin number 4. The second low bid for the Minnelusa equipment purchase was accepted, as the low bid was incomplete and didn't include all required components. Lead time was excessively long, and shipping terms were not favorable for the district. The last 2 items may be found at the bottom of page 4. The board may recall last summer approving the purchase of Class 250 and Class 400 gas mains for both 2023 and 2024. We continue to see extremely long lead times on these classes of meters and have recently been told that manufacturers are requiring orders to be placed now for delivery in 2025, and that we should expect the long lead times to continue through the foreseeable future due to high demand. Grubner provided the low bid for our 2024 order, but is unable to extend the pricing into 2025. Their 2025 pricing represents a 13% increase for the Class 250 and a 7% increase for the Class 400 meters. However, it does remain lower than the pricing we received from the low bidder for our 2023 order. So for the last 3 years, they are still providing the lowest price. We are recommending Grubner's bid be approved. And that's all I plan to speak to, but would be happy to answer any questions.
Thank
All
you,
right,
John.
Thank you.
All right. Masa, Vice President of Engineering Masania, will now review the proposed consultant services for water main relocation design related to the City of Omaha's streetcar project.
Good morning again, Masania, Vice President of Engineering. Behind tab 9 is the recommendation to utilize HGM Associates for water relocation design work related to the streetcar. HGM has been performing design work for the district to help peak shave workload by district design staff since 2013. Most recently, the board approved a 3-year agreement with HGM extending consultation services through 2024. We are bringing this project to you because it's outside the typical new development, water replacement, or transmission work that HGM has performed for us. HGM is needed to assist with water main relocation work related to the streetcar, and district engineers will manage and oversee the design work by HGM and perform all of the gas relocation designs related to the streetcar. So district engineers will still be heavily involved, and we've got a dedicated team. But we see this as a necessity to stay ahead of the streetcar design and construction schedule, with the current engineering staff fully allocated to infrastructure replacement projects and relocation efforts related to private development, CSO, and road improvement projects. The estimated amount for HGM design services is $1,360,638. With that, management seeks your approval to hire HGM for relocation design work related to the streetcar, and I would be glad to try to answer any questions you may have.
Masa, I have a question, or maybe Mark could answer it. So this design process that we're going to pay them to perform related to the streetcar, is the $1.36 million just for the streetcar, or is it for their services for a number of different things like non-streetcar design?
This is specific for the streetcar itself.
So is this 1.36 something that we would have had to design and move these mains absent the streetcar? Or is this strictly because of the streetcar?
This is, yeah, directly related to the streetcar, yes.
Okay, but let me make sure that I know what I'm asking or understand what I'm asking and understand your answer. If the city wasn't going to do a streetcar, would we be doing this?
No, this would not be brought in front of you.
Maybe some, pardon me, Mark Doyle, President. Maybe eventually, all of our infrastructure is possibly on the list to deal with.
Right.
This particular package of infrastructure is, we're only doing it on this schedule because of the streetcar schedule, and it all goes back to the discussions we all remember so well about our participation and our priorities that we are changing, but we have a cap on the amount that we're going to participate with the city on the streetcar project. Address that a little bit, and I want to make sure we answer Director Friend's question, and Director Cook and I spoke about this a little bit yesterday as well.
Yeah, so there's an agreement in place, as you're aware, that our relocation and replacement efforts along the streetcar corridor related to it is capped at $7.6 million. So the design, construction efforts, inspection efforts, all of that, that's typical as part of a relocation effort. This is part of that.
So this is part of that 7
Yes.
million?
Yes.
Okay.
And keeps our staff free to do the work that we would have been doing anyway. Now, this isn't done in a bubble. We absolutely work with our partner HGM, and we have a process by which we accept all that, and we own this.
We do,
It's
yeah.
just that they are peak shaving our design, and we're going to get more done sooner because of this, but the cap has been, it's a very valuable, that was.
And the city agrees this is part of the cap, there's no issue there?
There's no issue from our end, that's for sure.
I know from our
It's
end.
contractual.
I know from our end.
Yes, we had conversations about the impact of the development project and how certainly those things, as Mark Doyle said, would be on the list. But one thing we were able to clarify when we sat down with the city folks is that just because it happens to be in an older part of our city doesn't mean that that was what all of our professionals, the software, the research, everything that, first of all, we have a plan about what we're doing anyway, doesn't mean that that was going to necessarily come up. And when I had to take a couple of deep breaths yesterday on the phone, it wasn't so much that we negotiated. I understood that it was underneath the amount we were agreed that we were only going up to, which I'm going to take my piece of paper and 7.6 minus 1 point, have a little ledger. However, it was the idea that this development project, we've got to get on their schedule. I guess that kind of got stuck in my ego, for lack of my own personal Tanya Cook issue of the amount of accommodating that we are doing, and the idea that the fact that we had plans in place for the work we were doing, budgets, supply chains, I'm talking about something getting delivered in 2025, and that we are still working very hard and very graciously to meet the deadlines of this project.
So I'm still not clear, I apologize. This section of engineering that has to do with the area that will be impacted by the streetcar, is it fair to say that we would have done this anyway in the future, just not now, or not in the next year, or not in the timeline that that
Sure.
that comports with the city's timeline for the streetcar.
Yeah, that's fair to say.
Absolutely, yes.
It's all based on the end of the service life of the mains, and we'll engineer when that infrastructure needs to be replaced.
So any thought on if we weren't going to do it now, and I'm just looking for a ballpark. I know that you can't with something like this say 3 months from now or a year from now. When would we have replaced this had it not been for the streetcar based on all of the input that we have that Director Cook just listed?
I want to make one quick point, and Director Cook alluded to it. Just because they're older than other mains doesn't mean we would replace them before that. I mean, this is science, not art. They are, but estimating when these would be on the plan,
There's so many different segments with over 5.5 miles of streetcar tracks. There are sections that were back in the 1880s cast iron mains that are in great condition. They're built thick and they're not breaking, and we would not be touching them. I would just say very few of the mains out there we would be touching in the next 5 years within our infrastructure replacement program, unless the streetcar came about.
And what I also remember from my education on this topic is that the specs to have a streetcar on top of this, all of our pipes and are specific. You've got to have a certain kind of work and replacement underneath a streetcar that's going to carry human beings. So it wouldn't even necessarily be the same kind of work that we would have performed within however many years.
Mark, I guess I thought I recalled that we had looked at areas we could prioritize a pipe we were going to replace anyway. And places that we were going to do that within, I don't remember the time frame, but it seemed like in the next couple, 3 to 5 years. Those are my numbers, not yours, but that was kind of what I got the impression, that we would cooperate with the city where we could if we were going to replace it anyway. But it sounds like in this case, there could be sections of this. I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, I understand what the city wants. But why are we spending any money replacing something that we would not have otherwise replaced if we're not going to get reimbursed for it? This is not our folly. This is something the city wants. So why would we spend money and saddle our ratepayers to do anything that we weren't otherwise going to do in the next, I don't know, this is subjective, but 8 years, 10 years? Why would we pay money and replace pipe that we weren't going to just for a streetcar without some remuneration, without some reimbursement?
well, when we tried to come to a number that was fair to us and our customers, we landed where we did because of that very reason, that we felt, and again, we're nowhere near 100% designed today, I don't think. So 20 million, 25, we don't know what this could balloon to. Our participation of 7.6 is exactly that there is enough of this infrastructure that would be in play in the next, you need to correct me if I'm wrong here, I'm going off on a little bit of a tangent, Masa, in the next 3 to 5, that we feel good that 7.6, we're going to replace some things that maybe we might miss it by a year or so, but it's going to be fantastic to have this corridor with all new infrastructure at the rate we're replacing. That's why we didn't agree to 20 or whatever the actual cost was. And it's ballooning as we speak. Fair? I mean,
I guess I maybe what I'm hearing now was not what I thought I understood from before. And I'm not saying from you, I'm just, as I'm grappling with spending $1 million just on engineering services for part of this, because I'm assuming this covers at least the 5.2 miles that they're looking at putting streetcar track down. If half of that is something we wouldn't replace,
No, I think this is, I think we tried to encompass the infrastructure that we felt we'd replace in the near term anyway.
Okay,
It
that's-
is not all of it, though. That section in Midtown Crossing, for example, some of that is fairly modern, I think.
Right, yes.
We factor that out. No,
Okay.
I think, I feel real comfortable that we ended up in a spot that is a fair, I don't want to say deal, but for our customers.
Is something we were going to do
Yes.
anyway, and
Yeah.
I guess near-term is
Yes.
subjective, because near-term to me could be 2 years, where to someone else could be 5 years.
Yeah, and on
So-
this topic, we could be talking about infrastructure that might not be replaced for 10 or 20 or 30. We didn't launch into a full-scale assessment. We had a pretty good idea of what we had here. And there's a lot of infrastructure to the north and the south that connects to it that we're looking at in a little different way. That is truly infrastructure that needs replacement back in the neighborhoods.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure as I'm asked about this, because my informal poll of people that have asked me about it, have reached out, is clearly opposed to spending taxpayer or ratepayer money on this streetcar. So that's who I'm looking to represent, are the people that have reached out to me, and it's not even close. So I just want to make sure what we're doing is putting money into our infrastructure that we would have anyway. If we moved up the date a little bit, I could live with that. But anyway, I just wanted to make sure that I understood.
3 or 4 times what we're participating in is going to be modernized as well. I feel pretty good about this if I get the chance to explain to a customer in person. I really do. I think, our meeting, Director Cook and I, and the city and the mayor, everything changed, and I feel like that was a very principled discussion where we ended up in a good place.
Right, and I did in that conversation mention our ratepayers, and I've been to lots of community meetings over the last however many years. I don't remember anybody jumping up and down and saying, I demand a trolley just for these 5.5 miles. I heard people talk about water in their basement, so we're doing the CSO. People complained about graffiti even. I mean, I don't need to tell a couple people who are in law enforcement, but I cannot truthfully say that I'd heard anyone request. They've requested repeatedly over the years public transportation to get to work, maybe to get to the airport. So I'm, for what it's worth, will be watching closely. So that's how 7.6 was the number, so that's minus 1.3, which means 6.3. These are just basic bookkeeping type numbers. But that's where we are, and we did a lot of analysis to ensure that it would have been in play within a arguable, reasonable amount of that for that project.
And in working with an engineering firm that we've already worked with is a great advantage here. These partnerships aren't very old in the scheme of Metropolitan Utilities District. This enables our design staff to keep moving on what we would have been doing anyway, so we're not impacting the price. This is really, we're ending up in a pretty good place considering what we went through to get here.
Mark,
It didn't just happen.
Can you explain what peak shaving is when it comes to design work?
When yeah, we get a little utility geeky, I guess. Peak shaving, to me, would be taking some design work that we're not going to do anyway, but we need to do, and not staffing up for it. We're going to that's why we have a partnership with 2 consulting firms now, engineering firms, not just HGM, 3.
3, yep.
That's in order to take some of that work and offload it under our direction and our oversight, and not have to staff up in engineering to take care of work that maybe is temporary, although none of it seems like temporary anymore. We have so much to do, it's hard to keep after it. So that would be my definition of peak shaving in this case. Those firms have to staff up to meet our demand too. This isn't easy.
So, and there's years of a learning curve, I'd call it, to get them to understand our design criteria, our drafting standards, and all of that. So there's a lot of work put in 2013 when we partnered with HGM, and we're in a good place now to be able to manage the ebb and flow of work that hits us. And we've had record amount of relocation work with CSO continue to go on. Just a large number of road improvement projects that are coming to Omaha and Sarpy County as well. So without that, what I call augmented staff, we would not be able to meet those schedules.
Thank you.
All right.
Got all excited. Personnel,
Nope.
no, more?
I'm up here again, I'm sorry.
That's what's confusing me, among other things. Thank you. Services and extensions. Masa, it's your show.
All right, last one, I promise. Main extensions behind tab 10. Tab 10 includes 2 water main extensions for this month. I will highlight the first project listed, which is project number WP 1842. This is a supplemental request to work located in Subdivision 7 and is located near 156th and Fairview Road in Sarpy County. This was previously approved at the January 4th, 2023 board meeting. Jay's showing the map up there. This supplemental section is that line shown in blue. The project was approved for $10,477,317 at that January board meeting. This is being brought back in front of the board as the developer has replatted lots along Fairview Road and also along 156th Street. This requires additional mains to front their property and increases the project cost to $11,207,773. There are no additional costs to the district for the supplemental request. Jay, on the next slide, it shows some of the work done preceding this transmission main extension, and this is just a picture to show the equipment and piping needed to install these transmission mains. And with that, that's all I have to cover with the main extensions letter, and would be happy to answer any questions. All right, thank you.
Okay, now you get to really trade off. All right, Personnel Vice President of Human Resources, Bonnie Savine, will now review employee wage and/or salary increases and ratifications. Bonnie.
Thank you. Good morning. Bonnie Savine, Vice President, Human Resources. I will do a brief recap on employee counts. On August 31st, 2022, we had 833 regular full-time employees, 3 regular part-time employees, for a total of 836. For August of 2023, we ended with 890 regular full-time employees, 4 regular part-time, for a total of 894 regular employees. We had 13 temporary part-timers. That includes 3 temp part-time employees and 10 interns, and we had just 3 summer hires left at the end of August, so we've wrapped up that summer program. A quick review of jobs actively in various stages of job placement. We have 3 jobs that have requisitions that are routing for approval. We have 9 jobs that are posted now. 6 are external only. 1 is internal only. We have 2 that are posted both internally and externally, so there should be 8 on the screen that Mr. Roberts is sharing with you now. 11 jobs are in the application review or interview stages, and we have 1 job with 1 selected candidate that is going through the onboarding process. Moving on to tab 11, that is where you'll find the wage and/or salary increases and ratifications letter. Human Resources is recommending the Board of Directors approve wage or salary increases for 9 employees this month. We have 7 OAC employees that are in the first section. They are receiving an increase due to promotion. We also have 2 OAC employees that are receiving a wage increase, and that is due to a natural job progression within the family that they work. There is also at the very end of the letter 5 SPA new hire ratifications. One of those is in the president's office. Sarah, welcome. And we have 4 also in the engineering department. Any questions on that letter? Fantastic. I will keep on going if that's okay, Director Cook.
Please.
Okay, tab 12. Under tab 12, you'll find the group insurance contract renewals letter. Each year, the district's benefit contracts are renewed in support of our core values of organizational excellence and fiscal responsibility. We work to provide employees an engaging array of benefits while striving to achieve value in the cost of the administration of those benefits. The district continues to work with Hub International in evaluating our benefit administrators, our benefit plans, and the costs that are associated with those plans' administrative fees. Jeff Jorth with Hub International's local office is here today on behalf of our team and available in case we have questions for him. Outlined in the letter are recommendations for the following group insurance contracts: PPO and HMO medical and pharmacy, dental, vision care, flexible spending accounts, basic and voluntary life insurance, accidental death and dismemberment, long-term disability, COBRA administration for health and dental continuation, voluntary coverages of group accident, critical illness, and long-term care, and our employee assistance program. So I'm just going to highlight a few of the items in that letter. The contract with Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Nebraska for health and pharmacy plan administration was previously approved through 2024. However, a new 3-year agreement is being presented today that will reduce the 2024 administrative fees on a per employee per month basis for an annual savings of just over $12,000 is the estimate. Additionally, there is a recommendation to adjust some of the co-payments for the HMO plan. These changes are recommended to incrementally keep pace with increased costs of the plan. There is one change I would like to highlight in your letter that you see in front of you, and that is at the bottom of the first page of the HMO summary, which is attached to your letter, and it is for the mental health and substance abuse office visit copay. We noticed yesterday that the copay on your copy was changed to increase that from $25 to $30, but that will have no change. That will remain at $25, similar to the regular office visit copay. There is also one new recommendation within pharmacy administration, and that's the High Touch RX program. We feel this program will complement our existing benefits and provide performance guarantees that generate savings beyond the cost to the program. HM Life is the organization that provides stop-loss coverage. That is sort of our insurance on our health insurance claims costs. It provides both the individual level and aggregate level of stop-loss coverage. And as in recent years, the proposal we have is preliminary. Once we have final August claims, that proposal will be finalized, and we will review that with Hub. HM Life has recommended an increase in our 2024 rates, but continues to be recommended after another market review of providers that offer that service. Additionally, the current contract with Mutual of Omaha for life, accidental death and dismemberment, and long-term disability plans, those the offer guarantees the rate through 2024, with one adjustment to the long-term disability plan to ensure adequate benefit maximums for employees should they qualify for that benefit. And finally, under tab 12, I do want to take one moment to mention our annual benefits fair will be held on Thursday, October 19th. With approximately 500 attendees last year, we know the event provides value to employees, retirees, and their families. As usual, we'll have representatives from each of the district benefit administrators I just mentioned, but also Voya Financial, Family Focus Federal Credit Union, the IBEW 1521, mobile boot truck, and again, the Methodist mobile mammogram bus, as well as our on-site vaccine clinics for flu, COVID, shingles, and pneumonia for those that are eligible. So, any questions on that particular tab?
Excuse me, Bonnie, on the
Yes.
fair that you said is October 19th?
Yes.
Is that a day-long affair?
It is.
What, from 8 to 5, or what is it?
7:30 until 4.
Till 4, and employees are welcome to take off and leave and go get their checks and...
That is correct, yes. They
Great.
come on work time if they are scheduled during those hours.
Great.
Yes.
Do they have to have appointments or anything, or just show up?
It is just show up. The one thing we asked for reservations on are the shingles and pneumonia vaccines, just because they are limited and I believe refrigerated, and so they want to have a count for those that are going to be receiving that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Same location as ever over at the firefighters?
It is. It is close to the interstate and close to where a lot of our vehicle traffic is coming in and out of the construction and operations center, and a little bit more local for all of our folks at the various plants and facilities. So,
Bonnie, a year ago, I mentioned the possibility of partnering possibly with the Red Cross to have their blood truck out there. Did
yes.
you reach out to them at all?
We did. We're working with Tracy Christensen in Corporate Communications on opportunities to have them, if not at that event, at a couple other events.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, and I will move on to tab 13. At this point, I want to mention that management is not going to ask the board to take action on this particular letter today. There will be continued work with the personnel committee for the board, and management will plan to bring that letter back to the October meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Senior Vice President and General Counsel Mark Mendenhall will now present the Cox Communications Civil Settlement.
All right, good morning. Mark Mendenhall, Senior Vice President, General Counsel, here with a recommendation to approve entering into a settlement with Cox Communications. This settlement pertains to damaged fiber optics that were located in the 36th and Cornhusker fiber optic pipeline in the area of 36th and Cornhusker, damaged by district crews during a underground boring operation. This has been negotiated with representatives for Cox Communications over the last few months, and the amount of the settlement is $87,425.45. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Mark, M.U.D. crews damaged the line, correct?
Yes, sir.
Were there any lessons learned or any actions taken with the crews because of that? What was the investigation for that? We just can't say, okay, we damaged the line, we're paying $87,000. What were the circumstances and what was the follow-up?
Circumstances were marked fiber optic pipeline in the intersection of 36th that was ultimately not potholed to determine the depth of the pipe. And so the lessons learned were that district crews, when we are operating within marked facilities, that we have to pothole that area. So.
Was there any follow-up with the crews to learn, to,
Yes.
educate them? What I'm saying is there any follow-up? Oh, you're asking us to approve $87,000 because we nicked a line. Okay, how do we avoid it in the future?
Yeah, well, that's exactly how, and so yes, there is follow-up with the district crews after such an event. So that's how we avoid it, is if there are marked facilities and we're operating within that area, that we're potholing that area.
Mark, was this were we not potholing, were we directionally boring parallel or perpendicular to this fiber?
It, it was parallel. And so as we were pulling the boring head back is when we snagged, from what I could tell, we snagged the fiber optic line and ripped it apart.
So if it's marked, isn't the rule they're supposed to stay so many, was there not a reason that they could stay so many feet away from it as they were boring or pulling back because of other, I mean, was it like threading a needle? I guess I'm just trying to understand, because our people generally don't hit other utilities that are marked.
Well, the fact that there is a marked utility doesn't mean that another utility can't operate within that area. That the marking is the identification of the location. So yeah, we can, especially in a more urban area, you will see very congested corridors of utilities, and that's what we found in this strip. So there is our gas line. In the picture that I've seen, we've got a gas line. The fiber optic line is within 6 inches or so of the gas line, and then there's another power line that's fairly close as well. So
that helps me understand it. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you. Senior Vice President and Chief Financial Officer Mark Myers will present the lead service line replacement program update and state revolving fund loan authorization.
Good morning, Mark Myers, Senior Vice President and Chief Financial Officer. This will be a joint presentation this morning. Stephanie Mueller will initiate the discussion, and then Rick Kubat will share some information about our lead service replacement program, and then I'll speak a little bit about the funding and financing of it. I'll turn it over to Stephanie to begin.
Good morning. Stephanie Mueller, Vice President, Customer Experience. And Jay, if you want to go to the next slide, please. Thank you. I'll be starting off our presentation today to provide an update on our lead water service replacement program. We'll be presenting a little differently today with a few experts speaking to various pieces of the agenda before you. As a little background, in early 2021, a cross-functional committee was formed to start tackling the revisions to the EPA's lead and copper rule. Members of the committee were from a variety of divisions throughout the district with an emphasis on water quality, operations, compliance, and communications. The committee has worked over the last 2.5 years to ready us for the official start of the EPA's ruling, which is in October of '24. As part of our preparation over the last 2 years, we've had 3 pilot programs with a 4th to be finished yet this year. In total, there will be 52 lead services removed. There were many lessons learned due to these pilots, such as how to better communicate with customers involved, more accurate cost of the replacement, scheduling, and coordination with the city, just to name a few. To give more information on the EPA's lead and copper rule and an overview of lead services, I will turn this over to Rick Kubat.
Thank you, Stephanie. Rick Kubat, Government Affairs. Today I want to touch upon the lead and copper rule and its latest revision, the health effects of lead, where these lead service lines exist in our service territory, and some funding sources available for their removal. This board is certainly well versed on the magnitude and importance of lead service line replacements. Much of this information will be redundant for the board, but it is also being provided as part of our continuous public outreach efforts. The health effects of lead in water are well known. As this slide indicates, it can reduce cognitive ability, lead to hyperactivity, decreased IQ and attention span, and folks that are most at risk are pregnant women, infants, children, and younger adults. What the federal government has done is they've really they've incentivized the removal of lead service lines and really primarily put it on the backs of water utilities. And they've done that in a twofold way. One, they've made some financial resources available, not to the homeowners who own lead service line, but to the water utilities themselves. The other thing that they've done is via the EPA, through revisions to the lead and copper rule in 2021 that become effective in 2024, they've encouraged replacement of lead service line. That lead and copper rule revisions that took place in 2021 lowered the sampling results of lead from 15 parts per billion down to 10 parts per billion. The proposed rule also makes exceeding the federal lead level much more likely due to more stringent sampling requirements. Under the rule, exceeding the lead threshold will further require Tier 1 public notices with mandatory inventory replacement rates of up to 3%. The lead and copper revision further requires water utilities to provide information to the public on their lead service line inventories. And Jay, if I can move to the next slide. And I know the board has seen this a few times, and before I go into further explanation, I want to emphasize that the district does not have any detectable level of lead in our water as we push it out into our system or as it exists in our water mains. We also treat our water with corrosive control measures. This is a good diagram for the public's consumption. We own and are responsible for the water main. The property owner's responsibility exists with the service line that feeds the water from our water main into the home. These service lines, primarily in older parts of our community, are often lead, and a lot of times when you're not running the water continuously, it provides the opportunity for the leaching of lead into the water in the service line. Jay, if I can move on to the next slide. We know that we have 12,000 lead service lines, and we believe we have up to 4,000 more, or a total of 16,000. Right now, the district's current program is if we come across a lead service line during the course of our normal IR, or infrastructure replacement work, if we touch one, we're going to replace it. What that essentially means is right now we're averaging between 100 and 200 lead service line replacements per year. As you discussed earlier, that we're going to be ramping up more and more IR work. That average over time is going to be roughly 200 lead service line replacements in a year. If we just stayed at that pace, we would be looking at roughly 80 years before we were able to remove all the lead service lines in our service territory. The district has a more aggressive, and I want to emphasize, goal where we would like to remove our lead service lines in our service area in roughly 10 years. And Jay, if we can move on to the next slide. This slide is very tells a good story in terms of where the lead service lines exist in our community. Lead service lines primarily exist in older parts of communities, as previously mentioned. They exist in homes almost exclusively that were built prior to 1940. This is not an M.U.D issue or an Omaha issue, but certainly a national one. And because of that, they tend to exist in older parts of all communities throughout the United States. This map illustrates that our lead service lines within our service territory almost exclusively exist east of 72nd in North and South Omaha, again, where you'd expect older homes to exist. They exist in areas that are qualified census tracts, referred to as disadvantaged communities, where folks tend to be on fixed and marginalized incomes. The zip codes within the area illustrated on the map have an average median household income of $41,200. And the reason why I mention that is each lead service line replacement costs roughly $8,000 in today's dollars to replace. So my final slide for all of you, I want to briefly discuss what we've done in terms of seeking financial assistance to replace the lead service lines. Because if you take an inflationary factor, and I know Mr. Myers is going to get into it with the number that we have, we're estimating collectively roughly $157 million project to replace all the lead service lines. So the district has cast a wide net seeking financial assistance to at least get us up and running with lead service line replacement. So the first allocation of funds that we know that we're going to get, and we're thankful that Senator McDonald had legislation brought last year, he was able to get a $10 million allocation of state funds specifically to the district for the replacement of lead service lines. Those bills, LB 814 and 818, were the governor's mainline appropriations bills. And so essentially there's a pot of funds that we know that we're going to get, which is $10 million to help us get started with lead service line replacement. So that one's got a check mark next to it. Number two is one that we're cautiously optimistic. U.S. Senator Deb Fischer requested through a federal appropriation $4 million specifically for the district for lead service line replacement. That legislation made it out of the U.S. Senate's Appropriations Committee 28-0, so it looks promising. That being said, it still needs to be merged in with a House bill, a Senate bill, and in all likelihood that those appropriations will be made part of the federal debt limit bill that we all hear about towards the end of the year. The third item, which just wanted to make the board aware of, is when the federal government enacted the American Rescue Plan dollars, one of the things that the federal government wanted states to do was to use a portion of ARPA funds for lead service line replacement. Because M.U.D is its own political subdivision of the state, we did not directly receive ARPA funds. Those ARPA funds went to state, counties, tribal governments, and the large portion of funds that Nebraska got went directly to the state of Nebraska. Omaha's quote-unquote portion of state ARPA funds primarily went to what has been referred to as the North and South Omaha Grant Group. Last legislative session, Senator Wayne was able to swap the ARPA dollars out for state general funds, and currently that funding program is being reviewed by the Nebraska Department of Economic Development. We were not part of the initial recommendation that Olson and Associates made to receive the ARPA funds. It's going to be re-reviewed, and we'll make another attempt through the Nebraska Department of Economic Development. Sorry, there's a lot there, but it is what it is. The main source of funding, and this one's important for the district, as we look towards long-term funding of lead service line replacement, are funds that have been provided through the state of Nebraska through the bipartisan infrastructure law, where Nebraska is deemed to be a 1% state, meaning that over a 5-year period of time, the state of Nebraska is going to receive roughly $147 million in federal funds, specifically for lead service line replacement. But those funds go into what's known as Nebraska's Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, which is a loan program. And when I mentioned the $147 million, those are funds made available through the whole state of Nebraska, and they're not earmarked for any one jurisdiction. This revolving fund, for purposes of simplification, if we use $1 million, if somebody loans $1 million through the DWSRF program, you get roughly 50 to 62% of those dollars forgiven are provided for free. The other remaining 38 to 50 cents on the dollar, you have to repay back as a loan. And those loans are 0 to no interest, and you can stretch them out for 30 or 40 years. So there's a significant amount of money made available through this DWSRF program, and a portion of it is what I would refer to as free money. And the other portion of funds is you've got to pay back with a 0 to low interest loan. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I did, and I can come back to the mic, but I did want to turn it over to Mark Myers to further discuss some of the financing of standing up the initial program.
Thank you, Rick. Rick outlined that very well in terms of the funds required and the various funding sources, but I will kind of recap our request for today. In addition to the materials that are on the screen, you have a memo in your binder that can be found behind tab 15. And this information was also presented to the AEF&R committee on August 29th. As Stephanie described, there's been a plan developed to accelerate the replacement of all lead water service lines within the district service area. And the plan targets replacing all 16,000 of these lead services by 2034 at an estimated cost of $157 million. As Rick described, we're estimating the cost to be $8,000 per service, increased annually for inflation that reaches the $157 million total. Within that 16,000, there's about 4,000 services that are assumed to contain lead but need to be verified, and that $157 million includes the cost to perform the inventory verification that's part of that process. If we can turn to the next slide, Jay. So, as Rick explained, we're exploring several different funding opportunities, but we believe the primary source of funding now and into the future will be the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, or DWSRF program. And today, management is requesting approval to submit an application to the state of Nebraska for a DWSRF loan in the amount of $40 million, which is the maximum amount that's currently available to the district. This will provide a significant source of funds needed to successfully launch this program and offer a good way to maximize funding for replacement of lead service lines. As Rick mentioned, this program offers a loan forgiveness program so that we're reducing the amount of principal that's required to be repaid. It offers 100% forgiveness for the inventory verification costs, so for those 4,000 that are unidentified to confirm that they need to be replaced. And then also loan forgiveness for replacement costs within disadvantaged communities. And the percentage varies depending upon census tract data and the number of disadvantaged homeowners located within each area. Based on current projections, we're estimating that about 54% of the $40 million loan would be forgiven, requiring repayment of $18.5 million. As Rick mentioned as well, there are very favorable favorable terms, including 0% interest, and funds are received on a reimbursement basis, so the loan balance grows only as you incur costs for the program. And then repayment begins about 3 years after the closing date. So if we close on a loan in October, November of this year, we wouldn't begin repayment until 2026. Assuming a loan principal balance of $18.5 million, with a repayment over 30 years, the annual debt service would be about $626,000. We currently budget $1 million per year to replace lead services as part of the water infrastructure replacement program, so to replace that 1 to 200 services that Rick mentioned. We're proposing to use a portion of that $1 million to repay the DWSRF loan beginning in 2026. This would allow us to leverage the use of the DWSRF program and utilize budgeted funds to repay the debt. So in other words, we would not need to increase water rates to fund repayment of this loan. With that said, this $40 million will allow us to get the program started, but additional funding will be needed to replace all 16,000 lead services. Based on current projections, this first $40 million would replace about 4,200 services through 2027. At that time, we expect that we would need additional DWSRF loan proceeds to finance the rest of the project. And rate increases could be needed in the future as we add additional debt to fund the program. So to summarize, we're asking for an approval today to apply for a $40 million loan. If granted approval, we'll begin the financing process right away. And once loan documents are completed, a formal resolution will be presented to the board for approval before executing the loan documents. With that, I'll turn it back over to Stephanie to discuss our community outreach and communication plans.
Hey, Mark, this is Bob Sidzik. Had a quick question.
Yes, sir.
How is the contractor selected to safely remove these lead pipes?
We have some contractors who currently assist us with this program through the water infrastructure replacement projects that we perform. As this plan is being developed, we're looking at staffing of this, which may include a combination of additional contractors and potentially some internal crews as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mark Doyle, President. Just one emphasis on what Rick and Mark presented. We had some internal discussions about the payback, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. This is a very simple amortization with 0% interest. We felt philosophically 30 years stretches the burden out over a nice range, but this is open for discussion. If you just simply take the number of years divided by 18,500,000 divided by the number of years, at 30 years, we're saying about 626,000 debt service annually. If you go to 20 years, it's about 925,000, and if you stretched it to 40, 387,000. So, and I don't think there's any penalty for early payback.
Correct.
So that's something for you to think about. We landed on 30, but your opinion is definitely valuable on that part of this. Right? Thanks, Stephanie.
Thank you, Mark. Stephanie Mueller, Vice President, Customer Experience. So, community outreach. As we continue to prepare for the EPA's revisions to take place next year, it's critical that we're being proactive by educating city leaders, the public, and those that are directly affected. Before the end of this year, a public forum will be held with the community leaders from North and South Omaha, public officials, and health experts. The emphasis of the forum will be to educate them on the EPA's changes and the impact it has to those we serve. In addition to educating at this forum, we're seeking input from those that live and represent in the areas most affected. Their input will be important to our ongoing efforts to ensure that we have customer trust and support as we move forward on this program. Our website already has a landing page dedicated to lead water services, and we'll be adding an interactive map which allows customers to see what their water service material is by entering their address. And as we move further along in the program, we will add upcoming project areas to the map so that customers can better prepare. Beginning in January, public meetings will be held in the neighborhoods most affected, and we're going to make that convenient for everyone by meeting people where they live in public spaces and using the neighborhood associations to assist in spreading the word. In addition, we will attend public events with our own booth and with materials for the public, and many times this will be in conjunction with the hydration station. It's going to be crucial for the public to understand our water is safe and of the highest quality, and that lead services really are customer-owned, and we are advocating on behalf of those customers with lead services. Next slide, please. There are many forms of communication that we're going to be using at the public events mentioned, and in addition, the EPA's revisions are calling for a ramped-up approach to communicating to the public and those that are affected. Each year, we'll be required to educate and provide materials to all health facilities, schools, and daycares, as well as the health departments. Our plan is to provide brochures, posters, and fact sheets. In addition to the required forms of communication, we will continue to educate through a comprehensive advertising campaign. We'll be developing a public service announcement to air on local television. We'll have billboards, bus benches, posters, and they're all going to be designed and used heavily in North and South Omaha. Customers that have a lead or an unknown water service will receive annual notification through a mailed letter. And once a project area has been identified, mailings to the customer of record and the owner of the property will begin. This may also entail phone calls and in-field visits. Once a water service has been replaced, EPA regulations state that a customer must receive a water pitcher with 6 months of filters. In addition, we also must offer to retest their water. Earlier in the presentation, we touched on the results of the testing and various action levels. Based on the testing results, we may be required to implement a Tier 1 water notification, which is determined and approved by the Nebraska Department of Health and Human Services. This would require us to notify our entire customer base, most likely with radio and television announcements. This may occur on an annual basis based on those testing results. And just knowing that this is a possibility makes the escalation of the removal of lead services critical to maintaining customer confidence. And with that, that concludes the presentation, and we'll open it up for questions.
When a lead service is being replaced, how long is the water shut off at that residence?
A short amount of time, a couple hours.
Okay, so it's not an all-day event?
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, could you keep me informed of when you'll be having meetings in my particular area? I'll make an effort, as you know, if possible, if at all possible, and if it would be helpful to you, I would be happy to attend and be supportive.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Yeah, just keep me informed. The other thing I'd suggest is, I think you're on the right track. We need to go to where the people are. I mean, it's hard for people to come to us because everybody's busy. One thing that, and I know you've used this in the past, but I would tell you not to hesitate to use the next door neighbor. There's a lot of misinformation on that. So the more correct information you can put out, and as frequently as you can put it out, I think it'd be really helpful. People seem to, I hate to use the word subscribe, but that's kind of what they do. It's sort of a form of entertainment for people. But if you can keep the information regarding this issue out there in as basic as terms as possible to let you know how you're going to be affected by this, I think people will pay more attention. You've done a good job with getting information out regarding the water restrictions and what we have to do. I think that's been a primary source of people paying attention, and we need to emphasize that the more you put it out there, the better it'll be.
Thank you. I appreciate the feedback.
Sure. You're very welcome.
Any other questions?
I have a question about the pitchers and the water filters. How and when will those be distributed?
As a customer's water service is being replaced, they will receive the pitcher at that time with instructions on how to use that and also how to ask for a retest. But we'll also be reaching back out to them in probably the form of a postcard, reminding them that that service is available.
All right, thank you.
Stephanie, under our current infrastructure replacement, when we run into a water service line that has lead, do we make the residential person, homeowner, replace that line, or what's our process right now?
So
I'll take that one. Definitely, we do not charge the homeowner for that replacement. That's something that several years back when we started talking about this and getting very serious, we knew there were a few things you had to do. For starters, you had to the best of your ability, you had to identify lead surfaces. And fortunately, or unfortunately, but I think fortunately, we did that. There's a lot of communities in the country now that haven't even identified them yet. And if you don't know about them, it's hard to manage them. So we made a decision that we probably talked about that got buried in water infrastructure replacement, that if you touch it, you replace it. We've been replacing lead service lines as we come across them in their entirety for, I don't know how many years now. Somebody help me out. 5? Okay. If you read about lead service lines in this country, right, well, to answer your question, no. We bear that cost along with infrastructure replacement. If you just do a partial replacement and disturb that line, you break the seal, the treatment that we apply, and lead can leach into the house. That's a bad practice. And if you read about lead services in this country, one of the issues that the groups that are working to promote the replacement of lead services is that some communities are doing partial replacement, and it's causing a bigger problem than if the lead line was there in the first place. Right now, the lead service line in a home is protected because of our treatment. Once you disturb it, it's a problem. So, long answer to a short question, we replace that at our cost with our infrastructure dollars, and that would also apply to normal services, but we don't replace those. We always replace up to the stop box. I don't know that we ever have to replace up to the home. Somebody can help me out here. Generally speaking, we don't.
No.
So, yeah.
But the dollars come out of our infrastructure.
Absolutely, yeah, and at $200 a year. And when you look at conditional assessment, like we spoke of earlier, in neighborhoods that have lead service lines, we might not replace as many mains as we would have normally, and we might not be running across as many. That 200 could go down. And we're going to balance those dollars with, if you approve this request, with how we manage lead services in general. I hope I answered your question.
You did.
All right.
Thank you.
All right.
It sounds like the lead issue in the pipe is similar to what you hear about in older homes, where if you don't disturb the paint, then there's not a risk. But when you get down to the earlier levels of paint, say on a windowsill, then you've got
Great
a
analogy.
problem. I mean, would that equate in?
That's a good analogy. When you start breaking off if the lead covering outside of lead paint is not disturbed, it's less of a problem than when you start taking it off and sanding it. And that's a great analogy.
Yeah, I think people can better understand that. Thank you.
Question for Rick, really quick. I know Director Friend and I have had discussions as the plan is being formulated regarding the DWSRF loans and what those funds can be used for in terms of training. Do we know when there's going to be an answer from the state in terms of what those dollars can be used for training for this project?
We've been working closely with Senator McDonnell as it relates to that issue, and those questions have been brought forward in front of the Nebraska Department of Environment and Energy. At this time, I believe their answer is that DWSRF funds cannot be used for labor training, but it's a discussion that Senator McDonnell, I believe, continues to have with leadership at NDE. So the short answer is I think it's still unknown. We're working to come to a resolution on specifically that issue.
Thank you.
We certainly support that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, Manager of Customer Experience, Megan Walter, will present the Customer Satisfaction Survey results.
Good morning. Megan Walter, Manager, Customer Experience. I'm waiting for the presentation. Thank you. Second slide, please. I will be presenting the results from the 2023 Annual Customer Satisfaction Survey. M.U.D has sent surveys to customers in the past, but while doing research this year, we learned the industry standard is to determine the Net Promoter Score, or NPS for short. Net Promoter Score is used in customer experience programs across the world, and it measures the loyalty of customers to a company. Next slide, please. In June, we sent an email to nearly 177,000 residential customers asking, what is your overall satisfaction with Metropolitan Utilities District? The customers were given a scale of 0 through 10. Customers who ranked us at a 0 through a 6 are called detractors. Customers who ranked us at a 7 or an 8 are called passives. And customers who ranked us at a 9 or a 10 are called promoters. Next slide. We received a total of 15,855 responses, which was a 9% response rate. Comparatively, previous surveys have only received about a 5% response rate. On the right-hand side is a map of the respondents in each of your districts. As you can see in the legend, 24%, or about 3,700 customers, were detractors, ranking us at a 0 through a 6. 27%, or about 4,300 customers, ranked us at a 7 or an 8. And 49%, or about 7,700 customers, ranked us at a 9 or a 10. On the left, we have the percentage of the total responses from each subdivision. The responses were very evenly spread across our entire service territory. Customers were given the opportunity to respond as to why they ranked us the way they did, and we received more than 8,000 comments. Here are just a few of the positive words from our promoters about our people, our initiatives, and the safety and reliability of our services. You're here when we need you. We will always need the products for our homes, so be encouraged to continue providing your products and services at an affordable cost. Dependable service, rain or shine. So willing to help people who are in need of help. Now, some of the detractors were related to outage maps and outage communication, issues with the My Account portion of our website, cost of services, pricing, and fees. I think it's important to note that many of the comments about cost were related to sewer. Here are some of the comments from our detractors. My bill is very high. The charges for sewer are more than water and gas. Discouraged that your website does not have updates to water outages online 24 hours. The Net Promoter Score is a calculation, as you can see on this slide. According to a 2022 research publication from Qualtrics, which is a cloud-based platform for creating and distributing web-based surveys, industry standard on average for utilities is 7.9. I am very happy to report M.U.D is well above that at 25.50. While our NPS is very good, we do have some areas of opportunity. In the coming year, we would like to increase customer communication and outreach efforts. We are going to have continued education for our customers and our employees. We are creating a video that will go out to all employees, giving them the information from this presentation and thanking them for all of their hard work to get our NPS to where it is now. We would like to do more transaction-based surveys with our customers, which would give us instant feedback about a touch point with us. Quality assurance is another opportunity for internal departments to get an idea of what is happening with customer touch points, since not all customers will fill out surveys. Finally, we have the Customer Preferences Initiative, where we will ask our customers how they want to be communicated with. This will include emergency, outage, and bill notifications, along with an outage map, which will provide an even better customer experience. Thank you so much for your support in these initiatives, and thank you for your time today. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Megan, if you got rid of all the negative comments pertaining to sewers, what would our score be?
Well, I can tell you we received about 1,000, at least 1,000 comments about sewer. So out of the 3,700 detractors, about 1,000 of them were about sewer. And some may be indirectly related to sewer because they just referred to cost, and that clearly has sewer in it.
I don't know what else we can do. We've reinforced this over and over and over again, explained it in our bills. I just get very frustrated over the years because people just think it's an M.U.D. issue, and it's not.
Agreed.
Mark Doyle, President. We're still thinking about it. There may be some things. Another discussion for the near term, but thank you, Megan, and to the entire team for sending out that many contacts and getting that many back. And I know the directors are looking at their subdivisions, and the one next to me got the highest in notice, so he'd like to know how many detractors there are in there, but I'd
be happy to share that.
I'd like to quickly highlight a couple things from my perception as being connected with this great public utility for over 30 years now, in one way or another. Some of the things that the board has supported in the last 5 years for sure, like the 2-hour window, like recurring credit card payments, like texting ahead even with the 2-hour window to let our customer know not only when we're coming but who's coming, have just been lights out good. When you talk about customer preferences and some of the things that we can do with real-time transactional surveys, and by that you have an interaction, you'll receive a request for a survey, and not everybody answers them, but people like being asked. It's like in running for office. They may not respond to something you ask them, but they do like being asked and made to feel good about that. Sure, we have some detractors. Of course we do. But we want to know what their detractors, what they're detracting for. So we're working hard at that. But I would also say our field folks, from everybody that responds to emergencies, and we have plenty of them, mostly water main breaks, and the work that we're doing out in the field has just been lights out, beneficial to our reputation and the feeling of our customers. When we respond to things, you saw it up there. People, it's how they feel when something goes wrong. You might not have water in your house and you might not be able to take a shower that morning, but the way our construction, field services, Gas D, everybody, I hate naming things because I don't want to leave anybody out, but the way we respond and the way we interact with our customers has just been lights out. And that ties right into our positive feedback as well. We only tend to hear about the things that are not good, so it's nice to get a little bit of a highlight of the things that are good, and I'd say it's almost all good.
Agreed.
So thank you, and thank you for your support of those initiatives.
Megan, do we share that with our friends in the news media?
I would hope that the news media is here, so yeah, so great. That worked out well.
Do we share the results of this with the various news outlets? I think we should.
Okay, thanks for the
And
suggestion.
make sure that it's, the sewers are explained appropriately, that they're not M.U.D.
Absolutely.
All right, thanks.
Megan, when was a survey sent out?
It was sent out June 26th.
June 26th. I think it's important, two things to mention. One, to keep in perspective, what we've all lived through the last 3 years, it's a credit to the 800-plus employees at M.U.D., without question.
Agreed.
The frustrations, the mental health issues that we've all lived through, to still have such positive feedback and support for the most part from the public, I just think it speaks volumes about the quality of the workers that we have here. Thank you, everybody.
And I'd like to address something that Tim said, and really to Tim's point, we've done the city a big favor taking that sewer issue and putting it on our bill so that people read that and say, dang, that M.U.D. and those sewer issues. If we handed that back to the city, how many people do you think would really pay that? I believe that would probably go to the bottom of the stack. And they'd say, why do we have to pay for sewers? So the city should be, I would suggest, be appreciative that we've handled it this, how many years, Mark, has this been?
I think that goes back to the 1950s when the sewer fee was just pennies.
Oh, yeah. But for an unfunded mandate, how long has that been?
Oh, the CSO?
The bill on the costs that were.
2008. It was 2008.
Yeah.
2008.
Okay.
2008. Well, that's very interesting.
And we'll go through 2037.
Oh my gosh, can you imagine how much it's going to be by 2037? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, hello. Are there any members of the public in attendance today who would like to address the board? Do any board members have any further comments? Wonderful, this meeting is now concluded. We will reconvene for the regular board meeting in 10 minutes. Good morning. Jay said we were good anytime.
Oh, you did, okay.
He did. He'd be waving at me if he were. All right. Good morning. My name is Tanya Cook. I am the chair of the Metropolitan Utilities District. I'd like to welcome you to the regular board meeting for the month of September. It is already September 6th, 2023. This meeting is being live streamed from the boardroom at the M.U.D headquarters located at 7350 World Communications Drive, and a recording of this meeting will be uploaded to the M.U.D site after the meeting's conclusion. Roll call.
Bagley?
Here.
Cook?
Here.
Friend?
Here.
Sidzik?
Here.
McGowan?
Here.
Howard? Here. Kavanaugh?
Here.
I'd like to advise all those in attendance that a copy of the Open Meetings Act is available on the wall at the back of the boardroom. And now for those who wish to participate, we will recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Approval of the minutes for the committee meetings and regular board meeting for August 2nd, 2023. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Discussion? Roll call.
Bagley?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Friend?
Yes.
Sidzik?
Yes.
McGowan?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Capital expenditures, Director Friend.
Thank you. Item number 5, discussed in committee. I move approval as outlined in the memo from Andy Melville dated August 31st.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call.
Bagley?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Friend?
Yes.
Sidzik?
Yeah.
McGowan?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Acceptance of contracts and payment of final estimates, Director Friend.
Thank you. Discussed in committee. I move approval as outlined in the memo from Adam Gartner dated August 25th.
Second?
Discussion. Roll call.
Bagley?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Friend?
Yes.
Sidzik?
Yeah.
McGowan?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Change order number 1, Lake Cunningham Village Phase 2. Director Friend.
Thank you. This was also discussed in committee. I move approval as outlined in the memo from Adam Gartner dated July 31st.
Second.
Any discussion?
Get one.
Roll call.
Bagley?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Friend?
Yes.
Sidzik?
Yes.
McGowan?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Bids on materials and contracts, Director Friend.
Thank you. Also discussed in committee. I move approval as outlined in the memo from Sherry Lightfoot dated August 23rd.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Bagley?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Friend?
Yes.
Sidzik?
Yes.
McGowan?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Consultant services for water main relocation design related to the City of Omaha streetcar project. Director Friend.
Discussed in committee. I move approval as outlined in the memo from James Bartles dated August 31st.
Second?
Any discussion? Roll call.
Bagley?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Friend?
Yes.
Sidzik?
Yes.
McGowan?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Main extensions, Director Friend.
Thank you. Also discussed in committee. I move approval as outlined in the memo from Masa Nia dated August 29th.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Bagley? Cook?
Yes.
Friend?
Yes.
Sidzik?
Yes.
McGowan?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Wage and/or salary increases and ratifications. Director Begley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move for approval of the wage and/or salary increases and ratifications as discussed in committee this morning and outlined in Ms. Savine's memo dated August 24th, 2023.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Bagley?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Friend?
Yes.
Sidzik?
Yes.
McGowan?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Group insurance contract renewals, Director Begley.
Thank you. I move for approval of the group insurance contract renewals as discussed in committee and outlined in Ms. Savine's memo dated August 25th, 2023.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Bagley?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Friend?
Yes.
Sidzik? Sidzik?
Yes.
Yes. McGowan?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Okay. We will pass over agenda item number 13, which was the Phase 2 compensation structure recommendation. So agenda item number 14, Cox Communications Civil Settlement, Director Kavanaugh.
The settlement claim was discussed in committee, and management's recommendation is to approve the settlement of $87,425.45. I move for approval of this settlement.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Bagley?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Friend?
Yes.
Sidzik?
Yes.
McGowan?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Lead Service Line Replacement Program Update and State Revolving Fund Loan Authorization, Director Friend.
Thank you. This was discussed in committee. I move approval of management's request for application for the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund loan as outlined in the memo from Mark Myers dated August 29th.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Bagley?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Friend?
Yes.
Sidzik?
Yes.
McGowan?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
Okay. Do any board members have any further comments they wish to share?
I do, Madam Chairman. Is there anything we can do for the folks in the field that are working under these air quality conditions, or what steps should they be taking, and what can we help with providing them for safety, at least until this air quality thing gets straightened out? It should be temporary, but we've had it before, so we'll have it again with northwest winds. So is there anything we can be doing that we're not?
Mark Doyle, President. That's a great question, Director Kavanaugh. I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but I'm wondering if there's any suggestions from those that might be in the room that may have heard from I'm looking at Andy, I'm looking at Terry and Tom. Maybe let's have a little discussion about this. It's a great question.
Yeah, let's get out in the field and start asking people and respond accordingly.
Sure. Andy Melville, Interim Senior Vice President, Chief Operations Officer. That is a great point. I know in the past we have instructed crews to break earlier in the day for heat and other related type environmental conditions, and I think this is something we need to look into. I guess I might look at Shane Hunter and our safety and area if there's any recommendations maybe that we should be bringing.
I don't know if it's going to be too late for this one, but there'll be others. And next time the wind blows from that direction, it could be very soon. So we need to get on it quickly. I don't know if some sort of a face covering, I don't like that term mask, a face covering of some kind might be appropriate for the folks in the field.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
That's why I'm hesitant to give an answer, Tom and Terry. But let's have a discussion. If there's anything we can do or consider, we certainly will.
Maybe it's more water or frequent breaks. If I'm inside, not doing any particular level of physical exertion, as is my rule, then I cannot imagine being outside.
Just driving here today, I had to close my windows because it was aggravating. Just having the windows open in the car, so,
Some of us rode a motorcycle here.
well, some of us have more sense.
I know.
Well, it seems like maybe they can provide more information and education. If anybody starts to feel like they're being affected by this, then we should have some sort of a policy. I mean, sounds like something, we need to put some thought into this and discussion.
No mandates for, I almost called you Senator Kavanaugh.
Face covering.
A face cover.
Outside.
Yes. All right. Any other comments that the board may wish to share at this time? Are there any members of the public present who would like to address the board? Okay. I do not think that we're going to have a closed session today. Thank you, Mr. Mendenhall. With that, what? The smoke is affecting my thought. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. So seconded.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Bagley?
Yes.
Cook?
Yes.
Bren?
Yes.
Sidzik?
Yes.
McGowan?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Kavanaugh?
Yes.
We are adjourned.